The early 19th century saw England ablaze with ambition, innovation, and a fervent belief in progress. The railway revolution was not merely an advancement, it became the lifeblood of the nation. By 1845, railway expansion surged at a dizzying pace. Towns that had once felt remote now shimmered on the horizon, their connection to the heart of England promised by smoke and steel. The Industrial Revolution fueled this frenzy. Factories sprang up, demanding raw materials and labor. Cities swelled as people flocked to urban centers in search of jobs. Amid this whirlwind, railways emerged as the solution, an answer to logistical nightmares. They were the veins of commerce, transporting goods swiftly and efficiently. The demand for railway construction skyrocketed, and with it, so did public enthusiasm. It wasn't just the rich investing. Working-class citizens risked their meager savings, entranced by tantalizing promises of prosperity. Then came the Bubble Act of 1825. Initially designed to temper speculation and safeguard poor investors, it created an environment ripe for manipulation. The law allowed railway companies to issue shares, opening the floodgates to an influx of capital. Suddenly, it wasn't just about tangible assets, it was all about potential. Speculators saw golden opportunities. Shares soared, fueled by rampant optimism and bold predictions, even if most projects lacked solid groundwork. The economic landscape of the 1840s was a volatile cocktail of hope and delusion. The recovery from the 1837 financial crisis had ignited a new fervor. Railways became symbols of progress, drawing in capital with astonishing speed. Investors, hungry for returns, devoured the declarations made by flamboyant company directors, confident that their money was bound for a thriving future. You could hear the murmur of excitement. Towns would boom, fortunes would be made. But excitement has a dark side. The same economic dynamism that propelled investments also bred recklessness. The excitement turned into desperation. Entrepreneurs promised not just profitability, but riches beyond comprehension. Everybody wanted a piece of the pie, and the marketplace responded with a frenzy. Irrespective of feasibility, fanciful projections filled the air. Each announcement of a new railway line was met with applause and anticipation. Speculation grew, and so did the fragility of a market built on illusions. By mid-1845, talk of the Grand Railway Swindles spread like wildfire. Insatiable greed led many companies to issue shares that were backed by little more than hot air and audacious dreams. Investors found themselves on a roller coaster. Exhilarated by promises, yet creeping doubts loomed. As shares multiplied, so did the specter of collapse. Would the railway dream pave the way to prosperity, or would it catapult investors into disaster? As we plunge deeper into this intriguing saga, the questions multiply. How did investors continue to pour money into untested ventures? What led to the undoing of this railway boom? And as billions vanished into the void of deceit, who would pay the price for such blind faith in a booming economy? The stage is set and the stakes are high. The cost of trust is about to manifest in the most shocking way. Stay tuned. As the mid-1840s approached, England was buzzing with excitement. Railway companies sprouted like wildflowers, each promising revolutionary connections that would transform the country. By 1845, more than 200 railway projects were under development. Investors hoped to cash in on the potential for immense profits, driven by the societal shift towards urbanization and the indomitable spirit of the Industrial Revolution. At the heart of this financial frenzy was a cast of ambitious promoters, eager to capitalize on the public's excitement. William Waddington, a key figure among them, was a master at rallying investment. With grand visions of interlinking cities, he was emblematic of a new breed of entrepreneur who saw railways as the future. Alongside him were other notable figures, like Sir Francis Head and banker Charles Larkin. They painted vivid pictures of industrial growth and connectivity that enthralled middle-class investors and working-class dreamers alike. The stakes were high, and the enthusiasm was palpable. Shares were sold at staggering rates, often before tracks were laid or engines built. In just 1 year, the investment in railway schemes soared to an astonishing £35 million. For context, that's nearly £4 billion today. Railways promised not just transportation, but economic prosperity, job creation, and unprecedented access to markets. The allure was hard to resist. People flocked to railway shares as if they were gold nuggets, an irresistible opportunity to transform modest savings into a fortune. Public gatherings buzzed with tales of instant wealth. Everyone from factory workers to widows believed they could secure their futures through these newfangled ventures. Brokers became the town's new celebrities, each eager pitch fueling a frenzy of stock transactions. But beneath this exhilarating exterior lay a darker truth. Many railway companies, driven by greed and the sheer desire to tap into the public's enthusiasm, operated on little more than promises. Reports surfaced indicating that some companies were inflating their projected revenues and misrepresenting their plans. Fear began to creep in, masked by the euphoria of the market bubble. For every legitimate railway company, several pseudo-ventures boomed, buoyed by a culture of speculation. As if caught in a fever dream, investors failed to grasp the precarious nature of their financial commitments. By mid-1845, hopes soared, but so did the stakes, leading to a treacherous precipice. As rail companies raced to issue more shares, gaps between genuine and fraudulent enterprises widened. Observers noted a critical turning point. The once promising landscape transformed into one of reckless abandon, where investors began to question whether what they bought into was built on solid ground or hot air. The bubble ominously expanded, yet the allure was nearly impossible to resist. How long could this state of euphoria last? Many were oblivious to the tidal wave of disaster lurking just beneath the surface, waiting for the perfect moment to crash. Would the public awaken to the reality of their investments before it was too late? Or would they ride the wave of speculation all the way to devastation? The coming months would uncover the truth and expose the consequences of unchecked ambition in the realm of railways. As with all great tales of greed and betrayal, the story was only just beginning. Among the hundreds of companies vying for investment in the booming railway market, a few names became synonymous with deception. The London and Birmingham Railway led the charge, a once promising project that swiftly became a harbinger of disaster. Promoters painted grand pictures of iron tracks uniting distant cities, but behind these glowing prospects lay a sinister web of inflated value and calculated deceit. Investors, enticed by the potential for quick gains, failed to dig deeper. They were swept up by the fervor of the time, seduced by promises that echoed the hopes of a nation in the grips of industrial transformation. But the reality was grim. Many companies, including the London and Birmingham Railway, engaged in deceptive practices, manipulating financial statements and misrepresenting project costs. They issued shares not backed by genuine assets, but rather by optimistic projections and exaggerated claims. The techniques used by these promoters were as clever as they were fraudulent. They formed intricate networks of intercompany loans to create an illusion of sound financial health, leaving investors with nothing more than worthless paper. Reports surfaced of companies inflating their earnings by manufacturing fictitious profits, enticing even the most cautious of investors into their snare. As the bubble grew, so did the exuberance of the financial sector. Yet, beneath the surface, fissures were forming. By 1847, cracks in the facade began to show. Companies that had boasted of ambitious railway lines found themselves unable to secure funding or provide returns on the inflated shares sold to their anxious investors. The collapse came swift and brutal. The London and Birmingham Railway, once the titan of the rail revolution, could no longer disguise its failings. Company after company folded, leaving a trail of bankruptcies in their wake. Investors were left clutching their misfortunes, some losing entire life savings. The fallout reached far and wide, affecting families and communities across the nation. Take, for instance, Thomas Wright, a humble carpenter investing what he could spare. He believed in a brighter future where fast trains could bring goods and people together. But when the companies he invested in went belly up, all that remained were empty promises and shattered dreams. He wasn't alone. A factory owner from Manchester and a shopkeeper from Liverpool both found their fortunes dissipated overnight. The stories were heartbreaking, but echoed a grim reality. Greed had led to the betrayal of trust on an epic scale. Regulators scrambled to assess the damage, seeking to understand how so many could be misled. Investigations revealed not just individual failings, but systemic issues within the burgeoning market. The frenzy for railway shares had left towns economically devastated as fortunes turned to ash. Investors took to public squares, voicing their outrage, demanding accountability. Their calls only intensified as the full extent of the corruption came to light. As the dust settled, one question remained: how could such a monumental fraud occur in the heart of a national project aimed at progress and prosperity? What was next for a nation left reeling from its own ambition? The reforms that would follow in the aftermath of this disaster were crucial, but would they be enough to restore faith in the burgeoning railway industry? The answers were just around the corner, as the shadow of the Great Railway Swindle loomed larger than ever, setting the stage for a reckoning that would change the face of investment in Britain forever. The fallout from the Great Railway Swindle was profound and far-reaching. Swindled investors, many of whom had plowed their life savings into railway stocks, were left destitute. Public outrage surged like a tidal wave. Thousands demanded accountability, and the air was thick with suspicion and distrust. Once celebrated figures of industry found themselves vilified. The glittering promises of railway prosperity had turned to dust, leaving a dark stain on the economy. In the summer of 1845, parliamentary inquiries began to expose the web of deceit that had ensnared so many. Fraudulent balance sheets, doctored accounts, and misleading projections were laid bare for all to see. In response to the chaos, the British government was forced to take decisive action. After countless voices clamored for reform, the Board of Trade spearheaded initiatives to fortify the railway industry against similar deceptions. Regulations were introduced with a fervor previously unseen. Transparency became a new mandate. Companies were required to publish accurate financial statements, and independent auditors were brought in to ensure compliance. No longer could ambitious entrepreneurs cloak their schemes in a veil of investor optimism. The age of unchecked speculation was over, and the lessons from the Great Railway Swindle were not soon forgotten. However, the damage to public trust was significant. People began to view investment opportunities with skepticism. The allure of quick riches faded, replaced by wariness and caution. The appetite for risk shrank, and trust, once the lifeblood of the financial market, turned tepid. This cautious attitude towards investment remained entrenched in society, persisting far beyond the swindle itself. Yet, even as the dust settled, the echoes of the past were palpable. The events of the mid-40s greatly influenced future financial regulations. The railway swindle ignited a movement for investor protections, laying the groundwork for laws that would emerge in the latter decades of the 19th century. Mechanisms designed to safeguard the average investor were soon introduced, aiming to restore faith in the financial system. But the question loomed: would all this be enough to heal the rift between the public and the world of investment? The scars left by the swindle during those turbulent years would shape the landscape of British finance for generations. As the railway industry began to stabilize, the implications stretched far beyond mere economic regulation. The swindle taught a crucial lesson. Unchecked enthusiasm in the face of rapid development could lead to devastating losses. Society grappled with the duality of ambition and caution, raising the stakes in a financial world characterized by both opportunity and risk. Historians would later point to this period as pivotal. The late Victorian era would see the emergence of modern finance, shaped by the lessons of the Great Railway Swindle. Policies that emerged aimed to strike a balance between innovation and oversight, attempting to prevent future catastrophes. Yet, the memory of betrayal lingered. Investors remained vigilant, wary of once again being lulled into a false sense of security. Was this new era of regulation truly enough to prevent another catastrophe, or was it merely a temporary bandage on the unhealed wound of public trust? The answer lies hidden in the complexities of the evolving financial landscape. How long would it really take for society to trust again? Stay tuned as we uncover the ripple effects of the Great Railway Swindle that shaped the modern financial world.